Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Frozen Heart, Fated Soul. Episode 12. Chapter 109. Kiera. It was the following day. Alejandro seemed a bit restless throughout the night. I could feel his turmoiled emotions as he slept and I wondered what was bothering him. I didn't ask, hoping he'd tell me himself. Mom and Dad were going to get here by noon and I was a nervous wreck. We were going to tell them about the pregnancy before the mating ceremony and I had no idea what Dad would think. He'd surely realize we had slept together before we knew we were mates. I pulled on a deep purple peplum top and paired it with some WET look leggings. I slipped on some low-heeled boots, just as Alejandro entered, a deep frown on his face. He had left to see Callum in a hurry before. "Are you okay?" I asked, looking at him in his fitted black t-shirt and dark grey jeans. Admiring his muscles that rippled as he ran his fingers through his hair that was slicked back like usual. He looked at me, his eyes running over me appreciatively. His eyes darkened before they met mine and he closed the gap between us. Cupping my face and leaning down, he kissed me. I gasped at the sudden move. His tongue slipped into my mouth as he pulled me against him hard, deepening the kiss. "Oh, goddess!" He moved us to the bed and sat down, pulling me onto his lap, our lips never leaving each other. I could sense him calming down, or rather getting excited in another way. I pushed him back on the bed and looked into his eyes, breathing hard. "What is it?" I asked softly. He stroked me and thighs, his cold dark eyes staring into mine. "Jasmine." I tensed hearing those words. He sighed, sitting up. "She's..." 1,000 thoughts went through me. Was she the reason he was so restless? Did he feel something? No, I couldn't believe that. He kissed my neck, inhaling my scent deeply. "Callum confirmed it, against your blood. She's Zidane's daughter, Kiera," he said quietly. I froze, my heart thumping. That was why Callum asked for a blood sample. "So, what are you saying? She's my auntie?" I asked, disgusted. Alejandro slept with my apparent aunt and I slept with his nephew. Wow, we were crazy. Although he had no idea at the time, it was still crazy. "So why are you so restless about that?" I asked, pushing the random thought away. "She's working with Endora. She slipped up yesterday by mentioning her name in my office. I went and asked Marcel who they were discussing back in the caverns. He said Zidane's daughter. Endora planted her to begin with. She wanted me to take her as a mate, so I'd have a child with someone from the Ashton bloodline." His rough voice was ice cold. My heart was racing as it all hit me hard. How long had Endora been playing this game? How could she use her own children as pawns? My anger towards Jasmine only grew as well. "So why are you worried?" I asked. "Because I want to rip her to shreds," he said, the look in his eyes so cold that I felt my stomach twist, my heart pounding at the pure rage and anger I saw within them. "But then a part of me is saying to let your mother have the final verdict. I don't trust her, and I want to torture her until I extract every piece of information from her." I nodded, cupping his face as I pressed my forehead to him. I knew he was using all his self-control right now. Question her. If you want to let Darien or someone else handle it, then do. When Mom comes, if you want her to make the final decision, that's your choice. It's not your fault you never saw past her. I said quietly, realizing that he must be beating himself up over the fact that he had fallen into Endora's trap. Our eyes met and he simply frowned. How do you do that? He asked, his eyes dipping to my neck, and I saw them flash red. Know what you're feeling or what's troubling you? I asked, trying not to get lost in his scent. My wolf purred as he throbbed against me. She sure had been happier since we had gotten together. Both, he said. I'd like to say because I'm made for you. But in all honesty, it's partially my ability to sense one's emotion. I said, running my fingers through his hair, playing with the longer section on top. Once we mark each other, we're going to be connected even more. Which means you'd get into my head. Have something to hide, Alpha. I purred, brushing his hair back, before kissing him. Pleasure rushed through me as he kissed me back. Nothing to hide, but I'd rather you not see my dark side. I can handle everything about you, I whispered. You sure can. He replied huskily. He flipped me onto the bed. His necklaces brushed my chest as he claimed my lips in a rough kiss whilst he straddled me. I moaned against him just as I heard footsteps. Alejandro growled, getting off me as he had left the door open. A smiling Raphael appeared at the door as I sat up blushing. You should at least shut the door, he said, smirking when he glanced at his brother. I glanced sideways, blushing when I saw his hardened shaft in his pants. Kill me now. Raphael burst out laughing. This is a first, brother, he snickered. What's a first? Well, for one being so smitten. I like it. Well, I would say carry on, but Elijah and Scarlet are on their way. They will be here within the hour for sure. He grinned. An hour? And you came all the way up here to tell us that? Alejandro growled. Yep. Raphael said with a cheeky grin. Dad and Mom, I said. I guess it was time we told them. 15 minutes after Mom, Dad, and Raven had arrived, and I had finished gushing with Raven, we had finally all taken a seat. It was just the 6 of us. I'm glad you two have worked things out. Mom said, watching as Alejandro ran his fingers through my hair. Dad watched us sharply, still hard to believe. He remarked. But I could tell he was happy for me. Alejandro smirked, now looking at me, I'm sure there's a lot that you'd find way more unbelievable. He said, wrapping his arm around my neck, before kissing me full on. I gasped, kissing him back, feeling my cheeks burn. I could sense Dad's anger, but I felt too lightheaded to care. I heard Raphael chuckle. Easy there, Elijah, he said lightly. Oh my goddess! Raven said, and I saw her camera flash go off. I pushed Alejandro back. He smirked mockingly, clearly amused by Dad's irritation. There's a few things we need to discuss, so tell me, want to hear the good or the bad first? Alejandro said, looking at Dad. I would say let's get the bad over with. Dad replied with a frown. I want to know the good, Raven said. But you two are marking each other tonight. In front of everyone. That's going to be so hot. So what more good news can there be? Bad news first. Dad said, giving Raven a look. Okay Uncle L, breath, bad news first. She said, with a small smirk. Mom looked amused and I turned to Alejandro, wondering if he meant the truth about Jasmine. It's about Jasmine, he said seriously. Mom and Dad instantly frowned at the mention of her. I placed a hand on Alejandro's thigh, doing my best not to squeeze it. I looked into his handsome face, silently asking if I could do this. He gave a curt nod and I looked at Mom. Her pack was destroyed. She came here and said Endora destroyed it. Funny thing though, she knew her name. Alejandro picked up on that, so questioned her, and the Rogue King, who is? I looked at Raphael, realizing there was a lot to tell. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Alejandro said, taking out a cigarette and lighter. And she's Zidane's daughter, your half-sister, Mom. We did a blood test, it matched mine. I ended. It had taken 20 minutes to fill them in on everything. Mom looked shocked as she turned to Dad sharply, her heart pounding. Dad pulled her into his lap. I could sense her confusion, quilt, irritation. But I didn't understand what exactly was going through her. I wanted to rip her to shreds for her lies, but I thought perhaps you might want to decide her fate. Before you start feeling sorry for her, remember she was working with Endora. Alejandro said coldly. Mom sighed, so, he even coming here might be a part of their plan? She asked quietly. Alejandro tilted his head. She hasn't brought anything onto pack grounds. But we're still checking. Either way, she was sent here for a reason, but she doesn't know why. I'm sure there's way more to it. Mom nodded as Dad frowned deeply. Wow. So like, you were in a relationship with Kiara's aunt? Raven remarked, her different-colored eyes widening. I looked at her. Trust Raven to think of that. Alejandro simply gave her a death glare. Karma, Raven whispered. This time I frowned at her. Dad's brows furrowed and I knew he clicked on to what she was hinting. I froze, realizing that Raphael was right there, but luckily, he seemed lost in thought. Okay, what's the good news? I hope it's good because I sure need some. Mom said. Dad smirked. I saw Monday give him a look and I knew he had mind-linked her something I didn't need to know. The good news. Alejandro smirked as my heart began thumping wildly. Raphael smiled and I leaned into Alejandro, fearing Dad's reaction. Relax. Amor mio. He said, now looking down at me, taking my chin in his fingers before he kissed me again. I closed my eyes. There was something different about this kiss. It was deep, sensual, yet slow, but the sparks, goddess. I felt he moved away after a moment and looked at Mom and Dad. Let's just say, congratulations, you're going to be grandparents. He said, placing his free hand on my stomach, making my heart pound. It was the first time he allowed himself to let his hand linger there. What? Mom shrieked, sounding the girliest I've ever heard her sound. Raven gasped, her mouth dropped open, but Dad just sat there stunned. Mom was in front of me in a flash, hugging me, forcing Alejandro to let go of me as she rocked me. "Oh, baby girl, what? How? How do you know so soon? Wait, is this from yet?" I whispered, blushing lightly. "Are you happy?" Mom asked, her excitement calming down as she looked at me worriedly. I nodded and she cupped my face, kissing my forehead. "Then I'm happy. The baby wasn't the reason you two worked things out, was it?" she asked, slight worry filling her. I shook my head firmly. "No, it definitely was not." "Perfect," Mom said. She turned to Alejandro, about to reach for his face, when he simply raised an eyebrow, and Mom quickly let her hands drop before smiling at both of us. I almost laughed at their exchange. Although he was my mate, he was closer to Mom in age. Raven let out a whistle as Mom turned to Dad, who was sitting there, shocked. "Oh, my goddess mother of the moon! Lycan seedlings work without being marked. Oh wow, Kia's been pregnant all this time." Raven mumbled before she sprang up and rushed over to hug me. "My baby nephew or niece is here. You are going to look so cute with a pregnant belly. Oh my god, I can't wait to go shopping for the baby." "I know," I said, smiling at her, glad she was here for when we broke the news to Mom and Dad. I rested my cheek against hers. I truly missed not having her around. "Elijah," Raphael said as all eyes now turned to Dad, whose dark cobalt eyes were burning straight into Alejandro's. "I want to speak to him alone." He growled murderously. "Dad, not now," he said. "Elijah." "Scarlet," I said, "not now." I was about to speak when Alejandro ran his hand up my thigh. "I can handle him, go," he said with a cold smirk on his face. I frowned, looking between them. "No. I'm not going anywhere," I growled. "Dad, whatever you want to say, you can say it in front of me, fine. I sent you here, thinking you'd be safe, not for him to have taken advantage of you." Dad growled. Uncle, not wanting to butt in, but the attraction was a two-way thing. "You can't pin it on Alpha Al only," Raven added defensively. "So, you knew?" His eyes flashed, as he glared at her. She looked away but frowned. "I'm an adult and if I was attracted to my mate that's not a problem. Even if he wasn't my mad dad, please for me. Just please, Kiara, go. I can handle your dad," Alejandro said, taking hold of my chin as he rubbed his thumb over my lips. The urge to take it in my mouth tempted me, but I refrained from doing so. I stood up and Mom put her arm around me. "I'll stay," Raphael stated. Dad glared at him, but he refused to move. "Why do women get kicked out?" Raven muttered unhappily. "Men are pigs." Mom shrugged. I sighed, as I closed the door behind me. My heart was pounding. I knew what Dad meant, but he had to realize that we both wanted each other that night. I wanted him since the first day I saw him. He consumed me. I also knew Alejandro wouldn't take from anyone. In a way, I was glad that Raphael was there to stop them from tearing each other to pieces. I wrapped my arms around myself. Mom placed her arm around me once again. Don't worry, they'll be. She was cut off when a deep, menacing growl shook the entire foundation of the mansion. Alejandro, okay, before, stay out of it. Elijah growled at Raphael, cutting him off. I stood up, smoking my cigarette as Elijah stood up, pure anger burning within his eyes. I smirked coldly. What's wrong? Does it hurt your ego that your daughter's not a baby anymore? I taunted. I knew it wasn't the best way of handling things. But I wasn't sorry for that night. It was the best night I ever had, and I was not going to admit anything otherwise. She was here under your care, and you, he began. I took good care of her. I added mockingly. That was all I needed to say when he lunged at me with a pure animalistic growl ripping from his throat. I blocked him, my eyes flashed red as his alpha aura blazed around him. Well, I knew he was strong. I pushed him away, my own aura filling the room like a heavy blanket. Watch who you're messing with. I growled. She belongs to me, and I don't give a what you think. Stop behaving like such a hypocrite about it. She's 18. The attraction was strong and we gave into it, so what? I was annoyed off now. Yeah, and after that, you carried on planning your engagement to Jasmine. Elijah thundered, this time he punched me square across the face. I heard something crack and clenched my jaw. So, they wasn't angry that I slept with her, but that I hurt her by tossing her aside. The revelation stuck hard as I saw the pain in his eyes for his daughter. This time I didn't even block, when his fist struck my jaw. I deserved it. I did sleep with her and then, pretended it didn't happen. What's the matter? Going to play innocent? He growled, grabbing my collar. I frowned, my red blazing eyes glaring into his dark blue ones. I'm far from innocent. I know I hurt her. I messed up and I paid for it. But I love her, so do whatever you want, but if I were you, I'd keep my voice down, because she's pregnant and does not need this. I growled quietly. His eyes flashed before he let go of me roughly, and I looked at him coldly. The only reason I'm letting you off, is because you're her father. Touch me again and I'll tear you to shreds. I said coldly. You hurt her a lot more than I thought. I don't even know if I should forgive you. He spat. Don't forgive me, I don't need it. But try to at least tolerate me, for her. I growled back, equally annoyed. There's enough to going on in our lives to keep her stressed out, at least think of our pup. Your grandchild. He frowned, running his fingers through his hair, before he kicked the sofa in anger, his foot tearing through the leather. Raphael had just watched silently. You might find this a game. But Kiara is my child, and until you have a daughter, you won't know how precious they are. A lot of things make sense now. But I can't believe she was strong enough to handle it. I don't care if Kiara's accepted you, until I see it for myself, I won't believe it. Elijah said, now looking at me coldly. I have nothing to prove to you. I care for her and her alone. I replied coldly. Our eyes met and I didn't get it. We had nothing in common apart from our love for Kiara. The door opened and Kiara stood there, her eyes wide as she looked between the two of us. I saw her gaze flicker to my cheek, I'm sure I was almost healed. I turned my head away, not wanting her to see it. Her heart thudded, and from the corner of my eye, I saw her rush over, stumbling in the process. Both Elijah and I moved in a flash to catch her. I got there first, catching her by the elbows before she stumbled, and I pulled her into my arms. Her scent hit me like a wave of pure bliss, calming my raging emotions. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I had no idea what she was apologizing for, but I simply held her tightly, inhaling her scent. I didn't care who accepted us and who didn't. She was all that mattered. She wrapped her arms around my waist, hugging me tightly. I heard Elijah sigh, but I didn't bother to look at them. Kiera moved back, looking at her father, her chest rising and falling in anger. I knew she was about to say something, and I knew she'd regret it later. I clamped my hand over her mouth to stop her. "We've sorted our out, you don't need to say anything," I said, giving her a small smirk. I saw Elijah turn sharply, but Kiera only looked at me with her large green eyes with those blue rims filling with tears. "Lie," she whispered. "Hey! Look, we have. Do you see us crying?" I said. She frowned, touching my jaw, which was still slightly sore from the punches. Her touch sent a cool, soothing tingle through me, healing me. "Why did you hit him, Dad?" she asked quietly. Elijah frowned. "He wasn't wrong, amor mio, yet. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I know she's Daddy's little girl, and I did not want her upset if she wasn't on good terms with her father. And he wasn't wrong. I was in the wrong. What he said. I did hurt you, a lot," I said quietly. She now frowned, her eyes flashing. "Dad, here's a news flash for you. I hurt him too. A lot. I love him." The conviction in her voice as she said those words sent my own heart racing. Scarlet sighed. "Okay, look. Kia. Raven, go get your stuff ready for tonight. Elijah, take a breather," she said quietly. Kiera kissed me softly before she walked off reluctantly, looking over her shoulder at me. I just wanted to just pull her close and kiss her all over again. Her sweet taste lingered on my lips. When the door shut, Scarlet looked at her mate, glaring icily. "She's pregnant. She doesn't need this stress," she growled. "I knew," she said. Elijah frowned, his alpha aura rolling off him. "Yeah, I got that from the conversation earlier, so you kept it a secret," he said coldly. "Yes, because this is how you were going to behave. Elijah. They love each other, please, for Kiera and for me just." She ran her hands through her hair and frowned at Raphael for help. I simply shrugged and sat down, lighting another cigarette. I had no idea where he knocked the other one. I scanned the floor, spotting it, and reached out with my foot to snuff it out. "Elijah, when have you ever seen Alejandro care for anyone the way he does Kiera?" Raphael said. "You know I'm right here," I remarked. "Yeah, you're hard to miss." Scarlet shot back with a frown, before placing her hands on Elijah's arms. "He's perfect for her baby. There's no one stronger, more able who could be her mate." Elijah looked at me, frowning coldly, before he looked at Scarlet. "Jasmine shouldn't be pardoned." If she's been helping Andorra, she should be killed. He said. I agree with that. Scarlet sighed and nodded. Let's see how far involved she is. We all know what Zidane was capable of. Maybe she's a victim. We can't jump to conclusions. I said nothing. Let's see if they managed to get more out of he than I did or Darien. I felt Elijah's anger swirling around me. This was surely going to be fun. Raphael, you can take them to Jasmine's apartment. I'm going to see if I can sniff anything out that my men may have missed. I said coldly. I wanted to keep busy, because with each passing hour, I was getting nervous about tonight. For an alpha, this was like a wedding in a way. I knew that Serena and the Omegas were most likely already working on the setup in the training grounds. I was told to avoid the area, so I didn't find out what color Kiara was going to wear. The food was being prepped and the few alphas or betas that were coming would begin to arrive in the evening. Did I care? I'd like to say no. But like a weirdo I was kinda interested. I mean, she looked good in anything, so I wanted to know what she was going to wear. Okay, that's plain weird. I was now taking an interest in women's clothing. Kiara, you okay? You seem distracted. I asked Raven as we both sat there applying our makeup. It was later in the evening, and we had both showered, so we're getting ready for the event. We were in the old room I had previously been staying at. I was nervous, yet at the same time, it felt completely surreal. Yeah, of course. She said, liar, it's just my birthday's soon. At the next mating ceremony, I can find my mate, and we all know who you want as your mate. I smiled, applying some more highlighter to my cheekbones. When I was met with silence, I looked at her sharply, to see her pausing, her lipstick in her hands. Confusion and guilt consumed her. Raven? I asked. She gave me a small smile. Kia. Is it possible to have feelings for more than one person? She whispered. I blinked, my mind instantly going to Liam and Damon as I was sure she meant them. No, it is completely normal for some. I said quietly. I feel. I don't know, since you've been here. Damon's. I'm sorry. Is this awkward? First I'm crushing on your brother and now your friend with benefits. Not really, it's cool. I'm sure we can talk about anything. I said, smiling slightly. I feel awful, like recently, since you're not there, I feel Damon notices me too, and I won't lie. The other day they were both sparring and I was drooling over them both. She groaned. I burst out laughing. Well, since they don't match up to my mate, I guess together they might be on par for you. I giggled. She smacked my arm. Hey! Do you know, I showed them the picture of me fighting that thing and they mocked me, saying I looked like a monkey. She pouted. Seems like you're enjoying all the attention. I teased. She blushed. Well, I hope. One of them is my mate. She said. I didn't miss the torn look in her eyes. Or they might both be. I said without thinking. I smiled. I was sure it was a possibility. Her eyes widened and she shook her head. That is a rarity. She said. It happens. I said. Besides, you are too hyper for one man to handle. Oh yeah? What about you? Well, I have the Alpha King to tame me, I said, batting my eyelids. She smirked. Tame you or punish you if you're a naughty girl? Both, I replied, blushing lightly. So, you done it again? No. I think tomorrow is the night. Sadly, not even today, I said, with a pout. Wow, why? She applied some lipstick. He wants to make it up to me and take me out on a date. Oh, check our big bad Alpha King out. She giggled, her eyes sparkling. He is so perfect, I whispered, playing with the chain of the necklace. I had already told Raven about the witch and the necklace, and it was something I would be keeping on no matter what. I'm sure he is. Come on, let's get your hair done, she said as I came to the present. I sprayed some makeup setting spray on my face. Okay, let's do this, I said, looking in the mirror. I watched as she began to style it in an intricate updo. Are you wearing a tiara? No, I don't need a crown to be a queen, I said, smiling as I picked up the pearl and flower filigree hair vine. Just this. Beautiful, she approved. Whilst she did my hair, I applied body shimmer to my legs and arms. Watching as my hair came together beautifully, a few curled strands loosely framed my face. She did a low bun in the back. She added the hair vine to my hair as I applied a bit of gloss to my lips. Wow! You look like a bride, Raven whispered. I looked in the mirror at my shimmering subtle eyeshadow with my black eyeliner. My soft pinky lips. The dewy glow on my face. I picked up my matching earrings and put them on along with a few bracelets and a few delicate gold rings to match. Just the dress now, I said. Where is it? Right here, Serena said from the open door. I smiled when I saw her and Mom enter. Both looked beautiful in their dresses. This dress is gorgeous, Mom said, as she and Serena wrestled with the plastic bag covering it. Thank you. Mom, did you get anything out of Jasmine? She didn't say anything new, she was sent here but her purpose, we have no idea. Did you sense any magic from her? No. Well, we will figure it out. I told Alejandro she's best moved to the dungeons, Mom said, sighing. She was probably feeling guilty but we had no option. Now go get dressed. Yes, the boys want to see you, Raven added, waving her phone as Serena helped me into a pair of ivory shoes with a gold heel. I nodded, before I slipped out of my gown, keeping my arms over my bridadists as I stepped into my gorgeous large dress. Mom gave me a small smile as she zipped me up. The dress was stunning. It had 2 straps from one shoulder with a cutout showing the middle of my bridadists, with a wrap waist and a heavy skirt with a slit down one thigh. It was made of the most beautiful soft ivory fabric that melted flawlessly into a blush pink. It was embellished with embroidery, sequins, and small fine 3D flowers. From the back of my shoulder strap, there was a beaded cape that trailed the ground. Wow! Serena said. Mom nodded her agreement. I don't cry often, but I want to now. You look beautiful, Mom said quietly. I looked in the mirror, not recognizing the woman before me. Yes, it was me, but at the same time, I looked like someone who knew what I wanted. A true queen. Serena replied softly. One who will claim her king in front of everyone, Raven said with confidence. You should go change. It's almost time to head outside, Mom told her as she smoothed out her red dress. Got it. Raven said, rushing off to the bathroom with her purple tulle-skirted dress in hand. I looked in the mirror, my heart pounding, thinking of Alejandro. This was it. He was going to become mine. Fully. It also meant I'd be breaking the pack link to my old pack. My baby girl's all grown up. Mom said softly as she hugged me. I'll always be your baby girl, I whispered, fighting the tears. Okay, Alejandro's already out, as are our men. Once Raven's here. Raven said as she rushed out of the bathroom, zipping up her strapless dress. Let's get going. I took a deep breath, this was it. My marking ceremony. Alejandro, it's not too much? I asked, looking at the suit that I had selected out earlier from the options that Kevin had bravely brought for me. I'm surprised he had the cheek to choose a few. I usually always wore black pants, a shirt, and a jacket. Done. But today he had brought some waistcoats too, and I had actually spent 3 minutes to pick something out. It was weird to even admit, but I was dressing up to impress a woman. I now looked in the mirror, freshly groomed and looking good, I had to admit. Tonight, this was it. I was making her my Luna, my queen, and claiming her as my mate. Need help with the tie, Alpha? Kevin asked. I shot him a withering death glare. No. I can manage. I growled. I didn't wear ties. Well, usually. This time I would, and I'd do it myself. I managed after a few minutes, trying to ignore those, Darien and Kevin, exchanging looks. Both were at least smart enough to know not to approach me. I finished sleeking my hair back and turned to Darien, who was dressed smartly in a dark grey suit. Did you make sure my reservation and everything was complete? He smirked. C0CKILY. Oh yeah, it'll be perfect, he replied. I gave a curt nod and walked out of the room. I was at Darien's place as Serena said it was better not to see Kiera until she was ready. I could tell how much happier my pack members were for Kiera becoming Luna. There had been no excitement from them when I had chosen Jasmine, although many approved of her, she had not won them over the way mine info had. Walking towards the training grounds, I smirked as music filled my ears, satisfied at how brightly it was lit. I didn't want Kiera to be restricted in any way. The decor was in the lightest shade of pink and ivory. So, my baby girl was wearing these colors. Overhead, fairy lights and flowers were hung across. There were garlands wrapped around the entire low wall that surrounded the area, with lanterns sitting amidst the flowers. The few trees around were completely covered in lights. The ground was strewn with petals in pinks, champagne and red. A cream-colored carpet was rolled out down the center, lined with lanterns, and scattered with petals as well. There were a few barrels holding flower arrangements set around all over. On both sides were long tables holding lanterns and flowers. To the left was the buffet of food, and to the right was the drink bar. Straight ahead, the largest tree was illuminated in lights and beneath it was a small table, with a few items on it, including a long thin box that contained something I specifically picked out myself. Under that tree was where I would mark her. There was an open space for dancing, or in the current case, for kids to run around. Wasn't it way past their bedtime? Upbeat music was playing on a moderate volume and the entire pack who were not on patrol were here. I wouldn't admit it, but it felt better than the grand event planned for Jasmine and me. "Do you like it?" Serena asked Kiara what she wanted. She only said that she'd like it if the entire pack could come, everyone. Darien said, "I saw that the Omegas were all here too, although they were all helping out." Kiara truly was a queen. I gave a curt nod. "How many alphas or betas have come?" I mind-linked. "As you advised them not to." 7, plus 5 from the council members. Darien replied. "Good," I said, spotting Kenan and Alan. Scanning the area, I saw Elijah was in a deep maroon suit as he talked to Raphael, who was wearing navy, both holding a drink. Seems like none of our women were here. I walked forward and everyone fell silent. Despite having my aura suppressed, everyone turned to look at me, feeling my presence as the crowd parted. I walked through the center and stopped at the front near the tree. "You look admirable, my king," Kenan said. I simply gave him a blank cold look and he looked away nervously. "We will proceed with the marking after some drinks and meeting and greeting," Alan added. "Yeah, whatever," I said, turning my back on them. My, is this our Alejandro? Brother, you look amazing," Raf said from behind me. I turned towards him, shoving my hands into my pockets. "Shame I can't say the same about you. What are you wearing?" I said, giving him a once-over. Elijah smirked. C0CKILY. "You do look a little different, seems like you actually put some effort in." I frowned. I was not happy about those punches from earlier. "What is this? Some dressing up contest that you're all interested in what I'm wearing? Where was that Kevin? This was his fault." I frowned, seeing him making out with Adam in the far corner. "You know, brother, you really need to relax. Don't stress out. You're going to mark your mate today. That should distress you," Raphael said with a wink. Darien snickered. "Yeah, or there are other ways," he remarked. That made Elijah frown, and of course, it made me smirk. "Oh, now I have an idea." "True," I said arrogantly, my eyes fixed on him. "So, want me to call you Dad?" His eyes flashed. "No thanks." "Pops then?" "Maybe," I taunted. "AI," Raphael said nervously as Elijah became increasingly and royally annoyed off. I would have made a baby joke right now, but I had made it clear it was to remain a secret. Shame. Well, he better get used to it, because like it or not, Kiara is. I trailed off, my heart thudding when her scent hit me, and I turned sharply towards the entrance. Not caring that the three men gave me a curious look, moments later they realized what I had picked up. "He's totally in love," I heard Raphael in the distance, but I zoned them all out, my focus on the woman who was not yet in sight. The rhythm of her heart, I knew which one was hers, her shaky breath, her intoxicating chocolatey scent. Everyone fell silent as a soft song came on and all eyes turned to the women who stepped in. Scarlet was in the middle in red. She definitely was Kiara's mother with her confidence and curves, but she definitely couldn't compare to her daughter. She was flanked by Raven and Serena. I could see a hint of ivory from behind, as they reached the entrance to the training grounds. My heart was pounding, as the three women exchanged looks and stepped aside to reveal my queen. She looked. There were no words to describe her. Her gown spread around her, accentuating her slender shoulders, perfect B wrists, her hands held against her narrow waist, slim rings on several of her fingers. Her chest rose and fell with each breath she took, her eyes fixed on me as I slowly looked into her beautiful face. It was like nothing else existed. It was just her and I. An enchantress working her charm, one whose spell had already captured me completely. With each step she took towards me, my heart seemed to be thudding as loud as hers. She looked me over, her cheeks tinted a beautiful hue of pink, her hair tickling her cheek, her ears glittering with her earrings. She was perfection, beauty, and heaven combined. A package of such dangerous temptation that all I wanted was to worship every inch of her body, again and again. I moved forward, closing the gap between us, taking hold of her waist and pulling her against me. She gasped at my move, our eyes meeting. "You look out of this world," I said huskily. My nose brushed hers, and her breath hitched. Her scent clouded my senses. Beyond beautiful. I raised one hand to her cheek, brushing it softly, as I looked down at her plump, pink-coated lips. "I have to say, you yourself look incredibly," she whispered, biting her lip as she ran her hands over my chest until she wrapped them around my shoulders. "Good to know," I replied. Her body was molded completely against me, and I was feeling the heat rushing south as all I wanted was to kiss her senseless. I cupped the back of her neck, claiming her lips with mine. She gasped against my lips before kissing me back. The sweet taste of her mouth was like an intoxicating drug, and it took my all not to groan in pleasure. Our lips moved in sync, like a dance that we had perfected. She sighed softly and it only made me hold her tighter. Her heart was racing and I didn't give a that all eyes were on us. She was mine and I was hers. And I wanted everyone to know. She gasped for air, and I broke away, when I smelt the first hint of her arousal. My eyes darkened as I looked into her vibrant purple ones. I smirked as I bent closer, my lips grazing her ear. "As much as I want to carry on. Amor mio. I'd rather I be the only one to be able to smell how intoxicating you are," I whispered into her ear, letting my tongue flick out. She gasped at my move, her blush only darkening. I smirked in amusement, my nose grazing her cheek. This was how I wanted my life, forever. With her by my side. Forever. I was brought out of my thoughts as Raphael came over. "You look beautiful, Kiara," he said, taking her hand and kissing it gently. He gave me an annoying grin and I knew he was trying to irritate me. Shame. I knew he thought of Kiara as a niece for far too long. He wiggled his brows at me and I raised an eyebrow. When he realized it wasn't going to work, he dropped her hand gently. "Thank you, you look good too," Kiara replied, ever the polite one. I held her close, kissing her bare shoulder softly. My eyes took in the shimmer that coated her body. I couldn't wait to res her. Elijah and Scarlet approached us. Elijah let go of Scarlet and looked at Kiera. I couldn't read the emotions that stormed his eyes, as he held his arms out to her. Not going to give your dad a hug? He asked quietly. Dad? She whispered, pulling away from me and rushing into her dad's arms. He hugged her tightly, as she wrapped her arms around his neck. You look beautiful, Angel. He whispered, kissing the side of her head. Scarlet watched them with a slightly sad expression on her face, and I realized this was it. For them, they weren't only giving her away, but she would lose that pack link with them. That connection. The thought svcked, and I prayed the moon goddess never gave me a daughter because I now understood those emotions that I saw in Elijah's eyes, and they didn't seem like something I ever wanted to experience. I'll always be here for you, even if you don't need me anymore. Just remember you always have your dad on your side. He whispered quietly to her. Don't say that, I will always need you. She whispered, her voice breaking. Don't make her cry, come on guys. Scarlet said, trying not to cry herself as she took a deep breath, fanning her face. I clenched my jaw as the father-daughter duo broke apart. Kiera looked at me, her eyes filled with unshed tears and her hand still on her father's shoulder. Okay, I'm going to say it. For Kiera. I looked Elijah in the eye, before exhaling. You know I'm way stronger than you, you don't need to worry about her. I'll protect her with everything I have. Probably isn't believable coming from a FKR like me, but you should at least know that when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I can't guarantee that I'll never hurt her. But I will try my hardest not to. She's become my world, my purpose to live, my everything. I do love her, even if that may be hard to believe. I said, looking away. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. I saw Scarlet's smile, as she brushed away her tears. Raphael's eating grin was annoying, but I made sure my face was as emotionless as ever as I looked at Elijah square in the eye. Kiera, his words sent my heart into a frenzy, my eyes blurring. He didn't even realize how much he had changed from the first time I met him. I watched him hide his emotions and my heart ached to go to him. I looked at Dad, wishing he understood my baby wasn't heartless. To my surprise, he had a small smile on his face. He took my hand that rested on his shoulders and kissed it gently. I don't really doubt that. I've seen the change Kiera's brought into your life, and you do deserve to live that life, you are. He took a deep breath as Alejandro looked at us, a flash of surprise in his eyes. I always knew my angel deserved the best. And I suppose she was destined for greatness, born to be a queen. Your queen. I know she'll be taken care of. So I'll admit it, that I don't think there is anyone more suited for her than you, Dad said, almost pouting as he said it. Oh, goddess, these men. I smiled, thinking I actually loved their relationship. Dad looked at me and took my hand, moving it towards Alejandro's. A frown crossed his handsome face as he glanced at Dad. I think he wasn't expecting that from Dad, but it was he who had made that first move. I was so proud of him. His eyes now met mine and he held his hand out, allowing Dad to place my hand in his. Sparks shot through us, as our hands touched. Sending my heart racing, he was perfect, perfect for me. Our eyes met and I smiled. Life felt perfect. Other people began moving forward, greeting and congratulating us. Someone passed us glasses of champagne and I had to admit the evening was off to an amazing start. We even video called Damon and Liam. I took plenty of pictures and selfies. I even managed to force Alejandro to take a few pictures with me, although he was looking at me in every single one. Alpha Alejandro. Shall we? Alan said, coming over to us. Alejandro looked at me, and I nodded. Let's get this done, he said, placing his hand around my waist and leading me to the tree that stood in the center, dazzling with hundreds of lights. Alan cleared his throat and I remembered the words he had used last time. I frowned ever so slightly as he began. As requested, I will keep this short. Welcome everyone. Today our king will mark his true mate. He chuckled, and I felt relieved. I didn't want memories of that night to come back. Or for this to go just like that day. Although the memory was no longer as painful, I still didn't want to think of it. Alejandro kissed my lips softly, as he held me against himself. I expected Alpha Alan to continue, but it was Alejandro who now turned to me. Do you, Kiera Westwood, daughter of the Blood Moon Pack Alphas, agree to rule by my side as my queen, my Luna, and my true mate? To take the Night Walkers pack as your home and your family? He asked. My heart thundered in my chest as I looked at him and he took both my hands in his thumbs caressing my knuckles as he searched my eyes, waiting for my answer. I will do my best to do justice to my title and my responsibility as your queen and Luna, and to accept the Night Walkers pack as my own. I said softly, and above all, I accept you, Alejandro Rossi, King of Werewolves as my one and only mate. The love of my life, the beat of my heart and the light of my day. A small half-smile lingered on his lips as several people cheered and hooted, and I knew Raven was one of them. Then let's get this over with, he said softly, a smirk crossing his lips as he yanked me against him, making me gasp. I've been wanting to do this for far too long, no one's stopping you. I replied, gripping his upper arms as I tilted my head to the side, giving him full access to my neck. My stomach knotted as he licked his lips. His teeth elongated, his eyes glowed red, as he snaked one arm around my waist, the other now going to the back of my head, loosely gripping my hair as he bent down. My heart was pounding with excitement, anticipation, and need. His scent wrapped around me and I gasped when his canines pierced my skin. A strong, sizzling current rushed through me, spreading through my entire body like thousands of electrical sparks. Each one erupted when it reached the pit of my stomach. I clenched my GHS together, feeling the pleasure of it drowning me. A sigh of pure ecstasy escaped me, but I didn't care, nor could I stop it. My eyelids fluttered shut as his lips touched my neck, kissing me softly before he extracted his teeth. Licking up the blood, as he breathed heavily against my neck. I clung to him weakly. If he was not holding me, I would have collapsed. There was silence around us, only the soft music played and the beat of 100 hearts. My ton. I whispered, feeling lightheaded. I could feel the bond strengthening already. Can't wait. He murmured as my shaking fingers undid his tie and buttons. Goddess, did he choose so many things for me to deal with on purpose? But I had to admit, he looked so good that I had wanted to jump him the moment I saw him. He was mine, all mine. Finally, I had his buttons open. My fingers played with the necklaces he always wore. I don't think my mark was going to show up on his neck with all those tattoos. I smiled softly, but it didn't matter. He tugged my head upwards, looking into my eyes. I saw the flash of guilt in his eyes, before he kissed me deeply. I kissed him back, hoping he could feel my emotions, feel that I was okay with it. I pulled away, before I held his shirt back, kissing him softly before I bit into his neck, my canines piercing his skin. The completion of the bond caused a storm of emotions to rush through me. Emotions that were not all mine. A very quiet groan escaped him and he held me tightly. I moved back, licking the wound before I kissed it, pouring my healing into it. I looked at his neck, smiling proudly as I saw the mark, a white-gray wolf, set with purple eyes. I was wrong. It stood out perfectly. How does it look? He asked in my head, and I smiled. Perfect. I replied. I could feel his emotions and I knew he could feel mine, the happiness, the need, the love, the desire. He forced his gaze away and reached for the knife that stood on the small table behind him. He took my hand. I smiled gently as he frowned deeply before making small cut on my palm. He sliced his own a lot deeper before we joined our hands. I felt the strong current of the pack link snapping completely into place, and the link opened to 100 more. At the same time, I felt my old one break. It was a special and sad moment all at once. But one that I wouldn't trade for anything. Not now, not ever. Everyone clapped and cheered before Alejandro stepped back. His arm wrapped around me as he turned to the crowd, pulling me against his chest, my back to him. I present to you, your queen and Luna, Kiera. He said before kissing my neck, sending strong sparks coursing through me. I looked up at the night sky, smiling up at the bright glowing moon, nestled in the middle of the blanket of darkness. I smiled softly, it felt like Selene herself was gazing down upon us. Kiera, I stepped forward when I suddenly froze, the shooting pain that seemed to always accompany me when I wore heels stubbornly seemed to have eased. I shifted my weight to the ankle fully. My heart skipped a beat when I didn't feel that jarring pain that had become a part of my life. Are you okay, amor mio? He asked, concerned. My ankle. It's not hurting like normal. I heard Mom gasp as she looked at Dad. Mates strengthen one another. It could be that your healing is faster now as you are mated to a Lycan. She said. I looked at Dad, who seemed too stunned to even say anything. I turned back to Alejandro. It doesn't hurt at all. I said softly, feeling shocked. I had never allowed my ankle to hold me back, it had never defined who I was. I was strong then and I am strong now. But with that pain vanishing with each passing second, I felt overwhelmed and it didn't feel real. I'm glad. He whispered, tugging me back into his arms. He truly was. As he R0cked me gently, his heart thundering like a galloping horse. I could feel his happiness, his love, and his urge to keep me protected from everything. You cured me, there was nothing to cure. You were just waiting for me, he replied, his lips meeting mine in a deep kiss. It was cut short as Raven hurried over, her eyes wide as she did her best to wait for our kiss to end. Her heart was hammering as she looked at me with tear-filled eyes. Really? She said. Really? I said softly. She sniffed and nodded, that's great. She said, before pulling me into her arms for a tight hug. I fought back my own tears as Mom stepped forward. Congratulations on becoming Luna and on your marking. My baby girl has grown up. She said softly, cupping my face as she gently wiped my tears away before looking at my neck. It looks beautiful. It's different. She glanced at Alejandro, trying to grab a look at his neck. He gave her a cold glare before moving his shirt back, allowing her a quick look. It stands out. Mom said proudly. Raven snapped a picture of my neck and I took the phone from her, looking at what was forming to be a crown, with 3 claw marks. It was dark, completely black with a hint of red that seemed to shimmer. It wasn't fully healed yet, but I knew it would be just beautiful when it was completely healed. Many pack members, as well as the visiting alphas and betas, came to say congratulations. Some even complimented Dad that they could see his daughter becoming a fine queen. Food will be served soon. Darien called as Alejandro kissed my shoulder. My heart thudded and I realized the effect he had on me was so much stronger now. We were one. There's one more thing I want to do tonight. Well, for now. He added with an arrogant smirk, making me blush. I heard a few people laugh and I poked my tongue out at him. Which would be? I asked as I fixed his collar and retied his tie. Although everyone was helping themselves to the food, I knew many eyes were on us, or ears. He went quiet as he took my hands and led me to the brightly lit tree. His brows furrowed as he looked at me with those dark eyes of his. I owe you an apology, Alejandro. I cut in. I didn't need him to apologize in front of his pack, and he already had. Not for what I'm about to apologize for. Around 14 years ago, a little girl gave me a flower, to thank me for saving her, he began. The pain and guilt he felt rushed through me before he blocked it off. I frowned, I knew he meant me, but when did I give him a flower? He looked up at me, his eyes softening as he took a deep breath, letting a memory of long ago fill my mind. A memory I saw through his eyes. I recognized myself, a child telling him that I was helping him smile, pushing at the corner of his mouth, holding out a flower that he tossed aside and stepped on. The tears in my eyes. I gasped as the memory suddenly vanished and I looked up into his quilt-filled eyes. I'm sorry for that. Little did I know that same girl would grow up to be the only one who could bring me true happiness. He said softly, letting go of my hands. He picked up the slim long box that was on the table. Opening it, he placed the box down and took out one single beautiful deep red rose. My heart pounded at his sweet, perfect gesture as he held it out to me. I took it, staring up into his eyes. It won't make up for that day. But, even back then, you didn't see me as a monster. You were brave, strong, and so pure-hearted that I didn't think you'd survive this world. he said quietly. Survive me, he added, through the link. My heart ached at how he saw himself, wishing he could feel and see how I saw him. I inhaled the flower, I would cherish it forever, I knew that much. I wrapped my arms around his neck, letting my emotions fill him. His eyes softened and he wrapped his arms around my waist, as he rocked me gently to the music. Love you too, he replied as I closed my eyes, letting him sway us. I rested my head on his chest, enjoying the moment. We were lost in one another, no longer remembering that there were others around us. No one told us to come eat, or disturbed us, letting us remain in each other's arms for as long as we wanted. Where are we going? I asked as we stopped by a car. Thanks to the dazzling flash of light I saw that it was a sleek matte black car. Let's just say to complete our mating night, he suggested with a smirk. I raised an eyebrow despite the desire that pooled between my legs. Weren't you the one who said you would wait until our date? He pulled me into his arms, sending off strong sparks, and I gasped, looking into his eyes. I said I'm going to you after our date, I never said I wouldn't make love to you tonight. He said huskily, making my already fluttering stomach go even crazier. I'm sure that's not what you said. I whispered, trying to focus, when all I could think of was the ache that needed satiating. Oh? Well, you just became queen and I intend to dedicate the night to worshipping every inch of your divine body. One way or another. He murmured, making my breath hitch. My heart was pounding as our lips met in a hungry kiss full of passion and love. We need to go, before I take you right here. He gr0aned, opening the car door and helping me inside. I looked at the rose I still held in my hand, smiling softly. This is a moment I will never forget, not now, not ever. We had driven around 30 minutes, and I was led into a lavish penthouse. I swear we looked like a newly married couple, and I felt like it too. The moment we entered the penthouse, Alejandro scooped me up into his arms bridal style and carried me through to the bedroom. My heart was pounding and although we had sex before, something about tonight was different. Was it because we were in love? We were mated and marked? I wasn't sure, but I knew it would be so much more special. The room was dimly lit. Behind us, I could see the ceiling-to-floor windows that gave a view of the spread-out city and the glittering lights. I placed my flower on the bedside drawer, as I looked up at Alejandro. He removed his jacket and waistcoat. His glowing red eyes locked with mine. The moment he had unbuttoned his cuffs, he leaned over and kissed my lips passionately. Slowly pushing me onto my back, maybe I wanted it to happen, I wanted you. You're the one who was holding out. I whispered, tugging him by his necklace and on top of me. Now me like there's no tomorrow. I intend to. He whispered, his body pressed against mine as he kissed me deeply. This was pure bliss. With every kiss and caress, I could feel his need, his want, and his love for me. I closed my eyes as he went lower, there was no chasing one's release, we were simply enjoying and cherishing the moment. I'll always love you, he said quietly. Likewise, my king, I replied, his face. When the emotions became too much for him, he buried his head in my neck as he began me faster. I love you, I whispered, I love you too, something I never thought I was capable of. He moved his head back and looked down at me. I smiled softly, leaning forward, and kissed him softly. The night is young, game on, he smirked before his lips crashed against me in a hungry animalistic kiss as a low growl left his lips. My heart thudded in anticipation and all I wanted was to be devoured by him. Rayhan, it had been 2 days and nights yet still, she managed to escape us. I was one of the best trackers in the Black Storm pack. Despite being an alpha, I had the ability to blend in well. I was fast, sharp and nothing got past me. Well, not until now. This little witch was impressive despite the fact her powers were sealed, but I was beginning to doubt that, especially with how well she was hiding her tracks. That was until now, when we finally rounded in on her. The difference? I hadn't slept and we hadn't stopped. I'm sure the witch needed sleep more than us wolves. We were now on some rocky terrain, dense with forestry. She was smart to stick to paths near water, but that also meant there would be plenty of trees around. We had been searching high and low. I had a feeling she was retracing her steps too. The sun would soon set and I needed to find her. The other problem was that there were some manangle in these woods. We had come across 3 already. Uncle HD said there was a high chance for some to still be out there, and it seemed like it was true. Alpha. Lola said quietly as she landed next to me, passing me a pair of pants as we shifted back. Lola was the daughter of the current beta, and she would be my beta when the time came. She was 2 years older than me, strong and one of my closest friends. What is it? Shall we proceed, or do you plan to go alone? She asked, pulling on the oversized shirt. I flashed her a smirk. We need answers. I think going alone would work out better. I'll mind link you if things go wrong. Just be on the lookout. If she tries to get away, knock her out. Got it? She said, cracking her knuckles. Really, Lola? She's as weak as a newborn pup. Go easy on her. I said as I walked closer to the faint scent, looking down at the river 30 feet below the cliff edge. Oh? Then she shouldn't get past you, should she? Well, I have to be a gentleman. I can't go hitting women. I said lightly, as I gave her a small nod, glancing at the few men who were with us. They knew their job and each one nodded before I jumped off the jagged edge and landed on my feet upon the ground below. Now to find the witch. I scanned the area, smirking as I looked at the rushing river, the upended tree, some hedges. Where are you hiding, witchy? I looked back at the upturned tree roots. She is only 16 and is said to be very small. I sniffed the area, getting closer to the tree, a smirk of victory crossing my lips. Oh, this little mouse has nowhere to run to now. I saw the piles of nettles and toms that were piled together and my smile vanished. A sliver of guilt rushed through me as I moved the prickly bushes, tossing them aside. There she lay in the fetal position, her knees tucked into her chest, her pure white hair, which was patchy with dirt, covered her face. Her heartbeat was very faint. I wondered how I didn't pick it up, but I guess with the rushing river, and it seemed she was so exhausted that she didn't even hear me approach. She was tiny. If I didn't know she was 16, I would have assumed she was about 12. Bruises, runes and wounds covered her bare arms and legs. A fresh rash thanks to the nettles added to her already battered body, and I stepped back, feeling stabbing guilt rush through me. Did we push her to resort to this? She knew she was being followed. Her scent of orchids and ylang-ylang drifted into my nose, and I crouched down, reaching out, but before I could even touch her, she jolted up. Her startling blue eyes were wide with fear, a fear that soon turned to anger and hatred. "Stay away!" she shouted hoarsely. Her voice was soft, but it held strength. Everything I had planned went out the window. I was not going to manhandle a girl who had been, from the looks of it, even if she was a witch. What Kiara said now made sense. "All right. I won't approach. We just have some questions," I said softly, raising my hands in surrender. She glanced at me, then looked away, shaking her head bitterly. She didn't believe me. "We just want to know, what day Endora will attack?" I asked quietly. "First, let me go." "Now I can't do that, can I? I need an answer first, then you're free to go," I said softly. "She'll find me and kill me if I answer that, but then again, you dogs wouldn't care if I die, right?" She spat. For someone so young, she held a lot of hatred. I ignored the insult and ran my hand through my hair. "If you tell us, I can take you to wherever you're going." "To safety," I suggested. Our eyes met and I took a moment to look at her properly. She was a pretty thing behind the bruises and cuts. Severely malnourished but with about 15 or 20 kg weight gain, she'd look pretty good. "And why should I trust the kind who has abused me?" she asked quietly. I saw the darkness and pain in her eyes. "I wonder, what has she been through?" "I'm not asking you to believe me, I just want an answer. If Endora attacks, many innocent people will die." "You mean werewolves? What's WIing with that? You are all monsters anyway." I could smell the fear from her, yet at the same time, she was still saying whatever she wanted. "Not all of us. I would remind you that the witches have done a lot of harm to us as well, but that won't get us anywhere. Look, I won't pretend that I like your kind or pretend that we are going to get on. But we really need to know, and what do you think? Once Endora's done with us, she will let you go." I didn't like the fact I was using that line on her, but we were running out of time. "She'll come for you and whatever power you possess." I looked her over. I could faintly smell that she was a witch, but there was nothing that showed she was strong or full of darkness. Perhaps it was the runes. I had heard about witch suppressing powers by such means. "Why do you want to stop her?" she asked quietly. "Because many innocent people will die, family, friends, loved ones. She won't stop until she gets what she wants, and that is to rule." She looked at her hands and I saw the number of cuts that covered them. She seriously needed to see a doctor. "Endora will attack in 9 days. On All Hallows Eve. The night when darkness is at its strongest. Halloween." I said. How could we have not seen that? But that's not what she needed. She is looking for the moment the barrier to the underworld is at its weakest, she gasped, and I looked at her sharply, seeing the runes beginning to glow a deep orange. "What's happening? Don't touch me." She recoiled from my touch as she began trembling. Her eyes were filled with tears. 2:39 am. That is the moment she will try to resurrect the dark witches of the past. You need to make sure she doesn't succeed. That is the moment she will also be at her weakest. She whimpered as tears of pain filled her eyes. Okay, look, stop. I said. I knew a spell when I saw one. She was hurting herself, to tell the truth. It's fine, I understand. No. She will not attack the pack of the Lycan king. She broke into hacking coughs, whimpering in pain. I wanted to do something, but there was nothing. Her words hit me and I wondered what she meant. She will start her attack where the first witch is buried, the ground near the... We heard a loud hiss and she looked up sharply. A man-angle. The rotting putrid smell hit me and I stood up. Ray, there are too many. Lola's voice came through the link. Don't worry about me, protect yourselves. I'll manage. Just then, I saw two of the creatures come rushing towards us. I turned to the girl who was staring them, bending down and scooping her up. My heart skipped a beat when her eyes met mine, pure shock clear in them. But we didn't have time to stop. I broke into a run. She was as light as a feather. She didn't touch me. Her arms were wrapped around herself. How did they get here? I growled, glancing back at them. To make sure I never speak. Then why? I hit the ground when a man-angle lunged at us, slashing through my back, its disgusting scent filling many nose. Dulsanra went tumbling and I looked at the large cliff ahead. Panic filled me, but she stopped rolling a few feet from the edge. We had nowhere to go. There was the river far below, but that would do us no good. I stood up, lunging at the first of the man-angles. It lurched towards me, its claws raised. I glanced back at her, seeing another two rushing towards her. I shifted, ripping it apart before I growled, leaping through the air and knocking them away from her. One fell over the edge and I tore the other one to bits. The taste of their blood in my mouth, I looked at the last one as it rushed towards her. I jumped forward and bit down on its neck, ripping it apart. Blood splattered everywhere and I shifted back. Where will they attack? I asked. Only tell me, if you're able to. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with confusion and curiosity. The pack of the Dimos Prince. She mumbled, gripping her hair, as she screamed in agony. The runes on her body were now turning a burning red. The Blood Moon pack. I looked at her sharply, reaching to help her up. Look, I know someone who can help. She recoiled from my touch and crawled to the edge of the cliff. Her eyes filled with fear as she looked at me. I gave you the answers you wanted. She staggered to her feet as she neared the edge. Dulsanra. If you jump, you will die. And if I stay here, I die. She countered. I saw the trickle of blood from her nose and realized she was dying anyway. With the state she was in, there was no guarantee I'd get her back to Kiera in time. I looked at her. Her dirty white hair was blowing in the sharp wind, the setting sun made her hair glow. Mixed with the blood and dirt were fresh tears. Her plump lips quivered as she looked over the cliff. She was scared, but she felt it was the best option. That hurt. Why did it hurt? Why did you help if you knew it would kill you? I asked softly, watching her chest rise and fall as she looked down below. I moved closer, wanting to pull her away from the edge. Because you have those you love. I have no one, she said, looking at me through her tear-filled eyes. I swallowed, feeling her pain myself. I didn't get it, but something about this farewell was messing with my head. I had to stop her, surely there was somewhere she could go. The daughters of Hecate always ask for something in return for helping. I know. I am darkness, but even then, may I ask for a favor? She whispered, her soft voice carried on the wind. I nodded, thinking no, she was not darkness. The setting sun burned behind her and at that moment she looked, as if she didn't belong to this world. Don't stop me. My eyes widened as her words sunk in, just as she jumped. No. I shouted, rushing to the end as I looked over the deep ravine. All I could see below were clusters of trees and the narrow river filled with rocks far below. I scanned the area but could see her nowhere. There was no way she could have survived that fall. My heart was thudding, and although I knew she was a witch, she had been innocent, another victim. I stood up, my heart pounding, and knew I'd never forget that tear-stained face. I closed my eyes, not knowing why this felt so painful. Pull yourself together, Rayhan. I shifted and ran back the way I had come. I needed to tell everyone what I had learned. Alejandro heaven. A place I never thought I'd see, until she became mine. My heaven on earth. Last night had been perfect. We fell asleep when the first crack of dawn appeared. I had enjoyed every second of it. We had awoken at noon and then came round 2. After feeding my baby girl and pup, we had just stayed in bed to enjoy some pillow talk before getting ready for our night out. Now here we were, on the luxury yacht I had booked out. After having dinner, I now had a drink in my hand, as we walked hand in hand to the edge, looking out at the water. I knew she probably couldn't see much, but the glittering lights of the city far out sparkled. She looked so pretty in a shimmering black figure-hugging dress with a THGH high slit. Her makeup was sultry with deep dusky lipstick, her usually straight hair was curled and left open, perfect for me to play with. I guess we were kind of coordinated. I was dressed in a black shirt with a few buttons left open and black pants. I wrapped my arm around her and inhaled her scent. I love how I can smell myself off of you. I murmured, what do you expect, when you don't let go of me? She replied, amused. Not that I want you to let go of me. Glad we're on the same page. I said through the link, as I kissed her before letting go of her. I downed my wine, tossing my glass aside and smirking when she jumped as it smashed to 1,000 pieces, before turning her and lifting her onto the rail. Her eyes widened in surprise for a moment, but I knew she trusted me completely, as she simply placed her hands loosely on my shoulders. Tell me, baby, do you want a boy or girl? She asked, taking me by surprise. I raised an eyebrow. Boy. She rolled her eyes, pouting. Why? What's wrong with girls? Nothing. I just don't want to experience that where I'm going to have to hand my girl to someone. So yeah, I'd rather never have a girl, to begin with. I shrugged, kissing her cleavage softly. She sighed, parting her legs slightly to allow me to step between them. You're thinking far ahead, she murmured, kissing the top of my head. I have to. So, what about you? What do you want? I actually don't mind. She replied, tugging my head back as she looked into my eyes. Good to know. So, will you feed the pup? I asked, now frowning as I looked at her. Those belong to me. Probably, Mom says ouch. She gasped when I pinched them, making her blush. Alejandro. Kiera, I said huskily. Smirking when I saw her blush darken. These belong to me, oh really? Well, you're going to have to learn to share. She replied pointedly, poking my cheek. Not sure if I want to. I replied huskily, sliding my hands up her lush thick GHS. She had meat in all the right places, and I could spend my entire life just playing with her. She blushed lightly, making me smirk. I knew she had heard me. We had our walls up often, but times like this, it felt good to feel each other's emotions. I nestled my head in her neck and kissed her mark softly. She sighed dreamily, running her fingers through the short hair at the back of my head. Back to reality soon, hey. She whispered. I frowned, thinking of what was to come. We're going to get through this, and we will defeat Endora. I murmured, looking into her gorgeous eyes. She nodded, but I could feel her worry and sadness, despite her trying to block it of. What is it, amor mio? People will die, mates will lose their other halves, because of me. She looked away and I knew she was fighting her tears. I cupped her face, shaking my head. No, Kiera. Not because of you. Endora is a psychopath who has been at this way before you were born. People won't die because of you. Heck, if anything, she's my pathetic excuse for a mother. Our people will fight to protect you and our kind. Never blame yourself for something that isn't in your hands. I said, hoping she understood. She nodded, but I knew she was a queen who felt compassion for every life. I just hoped, for her sake, that the damage was minimum. I tugged her head down, tangling my fingers into her hair, as we kissed each other passionately. My eyes flashed and I lifted her down, wrapping my arms around her tightly as I pushed her up against the rail. Shall we? She asked, her eyes blazing purple as she ran her hand down the gap between my shirt, kissing my neck. I wasn't going to say no. I lifted her up, bridal style, making her smile as she caressed my jaw and kissed me deeply. Less than a minute later, we were inside the bedroom. I pushed her lightly onto the bed, and I knew my baby girl loved me letting loose. She truly was made for me. I loved how she could handle me completely. I looked at the dress she wore, shame I won't see her in it again. As we kissed another slowly, catching our breath. My phone began ringing and I frowned, ignoring it. Placing soft kisses down her jaw, glad when stopped ringing. Only for it to ring again. I growled and she ran her fingers through my hair. It's probably important. She whispered, getting off my lap, biting her lips as I pulled out. She stumbled a little and she let out a weak giggle as I caught her, pulling her into my lap. You seriously know how to drain me out? I'm not done with you. I said. The phone stopped ringing only for it to start again. Something wasn't right. I reached over, picking it up from where I had left it on the charger earlier, and looked at it. Elijah and Kaphael had called, so had Darien. Rayhan? I've had several calls, Kiera said, frowning as she looked at her own phone. I had it on silent. I quickly unlocked my phone and called Raphael, who was the last to call. Finally. Raphael said, sounding dead serious. What is it? I asked. Rayhan found the witch. Endora will attack in 9 days, on All Hallows Eve, and we know the location too. It's not your pack owl, it's Elijah's. Kiera gasped as she stood there. 9 days. That didn't give us much time. All our plans. Yet, we need to relocate, make sure the families are safe, and get a new plan in action. Raphael said, sounding dead serious. Why there though? That's where some witch was buried, around that pack. Someone she wants to resurrect. We need to replan. I know you were not going to come back until the day after tomorrow. But, he sounded guilty. Yeah, I get it. Don't stress it. We will be back before noon. Great. What happened to the witch, Dulsanra? Kiera asked softly. The witch, what happened to her? I asked Raphael. She's dead. Kiera turned away, as she stood up and wrapped her arms around herself. I could feel her sadness. I tried not to focus on how fine she looked in nothing but her black heels. Did I want to bend her over and ravage her all over again? Fine. See you tomorrow. I hung up and stood up, walking over to her. She was only 16. She said quietly. She was a witch and they're sly. Don't feel bad. I said quietly. She gave us answers though. She whispered. I didn't reply, as I kissed her shoulder and neck from behind. I'm sorry about cutting our time away short. I said. She shook her head, kissing my cheek. No, this has been perfect, and we have plenty more to come. She said softly. She gave me a warm smile before she sighed deeply, tugging away and walking towards the bathroom. I watched her, admiring her ASS and the slight sway of her hips, my gaze falling to her ankle. In the last 24 hours, it had healed completely. She had woken up and twirled on her ankle, exclaiming how it didn't hurt at all. Watching her, I realized how true it was. Apart from her legs thanks to the X, she was walking well. It had never bothered me, but the fact I knew she was no longer in pain made me happy. I wish that I could take all her pain, now and forever. I hoped that she never had to carry any burden in life, but deep down I wondered if all those she loved would truly make it out of this alive. For her sake, I hoped so. No matter how impossible that sounded. No matter what happened, I knew I would remain strong. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.